there's something called the Karika, which is a subtext. It's not exactly a commentary. Commentary usually will be word by word and putting things in order and explaining everything. This is more or less an independent text, but it's based on Mandukya Upanishad. It's written by Gaudapada, who was Shankaracharya's guru's guru. And Shankaracharya has given a commentary on both the Mandukya Upanishad and on Gaudapada's Karika. Now, the Karika, what Gaudapada did was he would wait for a while, let the Upanishad do a certain number of verses, and then when he felt it was time to jump in, then he did some verses. Then when we get back to the Upanishad, and when he sees a very appropriate time again, then he jumps in again. And then when the Upanishad is finished, then he goes to work. Then we have 3 chapters that are only him, but it's all based on the theme of the Mandukya Upanishad. The theme is Om, and Om is used as a teaching technique and a meditation technique. Now, it's also, of course, a sacred word. We know that. There's something special about it. There's something special about it linguistically, they say, because will be the first sound in the Sanskrit alphabet, and they break O into and U, and then U will be a kind of gliding till we get to the final Anuswara, which will be the final sound. On the other hand, if you remember in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, there's a conversation where Thakur says, I don't remember who it was, Mahimacharan maybe. He said, you interpret Om as Uma. I interpret it like the sound of a bell, dong, da, something like that. So it can be done. We can get the same interpretation by using something else. So we had a long session on this on our Monday night class. This is why I'm going through this, that many people tried to bring in this idea that Om is the original sound of creation and all of that. These things are true. That's part of the tradition, but it's more of a device, we can say, a teaching device, the way that it's used here. So I'm going to actually go through the different verses. Did anybody bring the book by chance? No, I should. Good. Okay, you can follow along then. Now, the Upanishad is just in prose. We won't go through the Karika, but that's all in nice verse form. Om ityetat aksharam idam sarvam tasya upavyakyanam bhutam bhavad bhavishyad iti sarvam omkara eva yachanyat turi kalatitam tadapi omkara eva. So it starts out that Om, and we'll see that Om will stand for Brahman, both Nirguna and Saguna. That Om iti etat aksharam. So iti etat. So this, it stands for the whole universe. For this akshara, Om, akshara has 2 meanings. One, it's the syllable, and it's also imperishable. So this imperishable Om, that idam sarvam, it's everything. So it's the most inclusive concept of Brahman that we have, that how Thakur said so often, that Brahman has become all this. So we can say Om, it's identified with the Brahman, so it's become all this. And then the tasya upavyakyanam will get this interpretation of Om that it represents everything that's gone in the past, bhutam, bhavad, everything in the present, and bhavishyati, everything that will take place in the future. All of this is Om. So just to get an idea of the significance of Om. And then it says whatever else there is, that's beyond the 3 times, past, present, and future. So it's not only that which always was and is and will be, but it's beyond time itself. Because all time dwells within Brahman, within consciousness. So this is also Om. So this verse says, I'm reading from Swami Lokeshwaranandaji's translation. Om is this phenomenal world, so sarvamidam. And then to make it clear, this is upyakya. To make it clear, it is the past, the present, and the future. All this is nothing but Om, Omkara. If there's anything beyond this and beyond the 3 periods of time, that too is Om, Omkara. Okay, now what we're going to see is this idea of different states. Let's go to number 2. Sarvam hyetad Brahma ayam atma Brahma soyam atma chatushpat. Now, all of this, everything we see is a Brahman, and ayam atma Brahma. This is one of the Mahavakyas, that the self is verily Brahman, and all of this is Om. So we're getting the whole philosophy of the nature of Brahman by interpreting this Om. Now we get this Chatushpat, that it has 4 different elements to it, 4 different stages. These will actually be the different states of conscious being that we have. And we'll see that the interpretation will really be with 3 plus 1, because the 4th one, the superconscious state, will be treated separately and differently. And the reason I say this is that if we break down Om into the 3 sounds, then there's no room for this 4th one. So the 3 sounds, these are called matras. So we have 3 matras, and Om together, Turiya, the 4th, which is the superconscious state, which is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it's called a matra. The soundless sound, the Om, which transcends all different parts and elements. So we're starting out now by saying that there'll be 4 different sub categories within this Om, but we're going to treat the first 3 differently from the last one, because the last one is a state that's not a state, because there's no functioning of the mind. It's different from the others. So all this phenomenal world is Brahman. This individual self is also Brahman. This self has 4 states. Now, the self doesn't really have states. It means that consciousness will function in 4 different states. That means that the individual, as human beings, every day we'll find ourselves either in the waking state, or we'll find ourselves asleep and dreaming, or we'll find ourselves sleeping without dreaming. These will be the 3 states of consciousness that all of us go through. Phenomenal. These are all phenomenal states, experienceable things. Now, the 4th, we'll see, is the one that is very rare. That will be identified with something like Nirvikalpa Samadhi or enlightenment. That'll be a state that's not a state, beyond that. So we're starting out with this idea of 4 states, but very quickly we'll see that most of the analysis in the first portion of the Upanishad will deal with 3 states of consciousness. Now, in Vedantic thought, this is one of the ways that we try to see that the real self is something transcendent. The real self functions in the waking state through this physical body, but then in the dream state, that same I is identified with the dream body. So that when we wake up, we use the same word I. I dreamt that I took a trip, I went to India, I visited family, all of these things. It's the same I, but the I in the dream had no knowledge of the I that's sleeping in bed. They're different. So we wake up and we analyze and we say that, oh, the sense of I, this ego sense, is not really so contingent upon that physical body that I always connected it with. I was equally identified with the dream body. The same I. It's not that I had a dream that somebody else was doing this. No, I had a dream that I was doing it. And then the dreamless sleep state, we'll see the same I. So this I, this phenomenal ego, is entering into these 3 different states. At the same time, this I as the witness, which is also unchanging, and one is beyond and observing both of them. so that we're aware of that change. If we wake up directly from a dream, we can actually watch ourselves going from that dream state to the waking state, and with the feeling the same I was observing the other and acting in it, both the observer and the actor. So this is this analysis. What is the real nature of I? This real nature of I is that it can falsely identify itself with a dream body as well as with the waking state body, but it's really the witness of all of these states. So this will be some of the analysis that will be connected with this meditation on Om. So that's the second verse. Now we'll get verses that will explain the difference between these three states of consciousness: waking, dream, and dreamless sleep. Jagarita sthanaha. So this is the waking state. Bahis prajnaha. That means our awareness is of external things. The senses are functioning. We're perceiving things. We're hearing and seeing things, all of that. They're functioning in that state, and we're aware of them. So bahis prajnaha. Our awareness is external. Saptanga and ekona vimshati mukhaha. 7 limbs and 19 mouths. Now, this is all symbolic stuff. This simply means that we have our physical body, that we have our external senses, our karmendriyas, gyanendriyas, that everything is functioning in this waking state. Stula bhug, and we're experiencing gross objects. That means that, now it's not that in the waking state we don't also think, and in the waking state we can daydream, we can feel emotions and all of that. But the distinguishing feature is that we're able to experience external physical objects. Now, this Upanishad doesn't bother with this idea that this is really Brahman, this is really Chinmaya. We're starting from a very common sense point of view that external physical objects exist. This body exists. It has some independent type of existence. And in the waking state, we can experience these external things through the senses. And of course, the senses take it to the mind, and then consciousness has to be present. And then we have that experience, this tulabhuk. And this is called Vaishwanaraha or Vishwa. We'll find the 2 different terms used. Now, Vaishwanara, we can break this down into 2 things, Vishwa and Nara. And this is a second theme. It gets a little complicated. Sometimes it's good to make a chart even. The second theme that we find here is the idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm. That there'll be a cosmic way of explaining all of this. There'll be something on the cosmic level, which corresponds to the waking state of the individual, something on the cosmic level, which corresponds to the dream, and something on the cosmic level, which corresponds to the dreamless sleep state. When we get to the 4th, there's no correspondence because there's only oneness in that state. So we won't even say that on the cosmic level it's a Brahman, and on the microcosmic level it's Atman, because there's only one at that point. So this Vaishwanara, Vishwa, this or what we'll find is called Virat. What is Virat? Virat is this Om or Brahman, manifest as this external, visible, experienceable universe. And the other thing about the waking state is that Nara, is that this human being is the one with this physical body. So these are the 2 corresponding things. With the samashti vyashti, there's the macrocosm and microcosm. The macrocosm point of view, that Brahman is manifest as the entire universe. Microcosmic point of view, that Brahman is manifest as the individual. With all of the koshas involved. Its koshas will come in also. With the physical body, the Annamaya kosha and the Pranamaya kosha, all of them will be present there. So this is Pratamaha Padaha. This will be the first, we can say, empirical, experienceable way that the ego functions in the world. This is the first way that we as individuals, as jivas, this is the first state of consciousness that will be discussed here. It's the waking state, and the physical body is present. We experience external things, and the equivalent to this in the cosmic level, that because this visible universe is the body of God. This is the idea of the Purusha. So we have that equivalence there. So verse 3 says, when you are awake, you are conscious of the external world. These are very obvious things. And you enjoy the world through your sense organs. You then use the 7 limbs, the 19 doors of perception. These will be our 24 cosmic principles minus some of the subtle elements and things. And the gross body that you have as an individual. This is the first manifestation of the self. It's not exactly a manifestation of the self. This is how this witnessing consciousness will experience the world, because it's really the mind is in the waking state. When the mind is in the waking state, it's aware of the body and external things, and the witness will experience things that are brought to the mind in that state. Okay. Any questions so far? No. Okay. Swapnasthana. Now we're getting, Ulka.
Swamiji, the
Yeah.
over here described, is that the same as what's described in Bhagavata? Bhagavad Puran?
Is there a special section that describes these things? Or why?
Because
Did you read something recently, or?
There too, I think in Bhagavad they talk about this Virat who came.
Okay. This concept of Virat. Yeah. This goes way back to the earliest Upanishads, even, and it's a concept that's used in all different schools. Okay. So yeah, so it easily could be found there also. Yeah. So swapnasthanaha, antaprajnaha. We have our awareness of everything is internal. So when we're having a dream, we're not aware of the room that we're lying in, of the bed that we're lying on. We're not aware of anything external to this physical body. Everything is internal. Antaprajnaha. Now it repeats this, saptanga, that there are 7 limbs, and ekonavimshati mukhaha, and 19. The physical body is still there. And apparently we have all of these things in the dream state because we have a dreamed body. But it's not exactly the same. I'm not sure why they repeat this, to be honest. Then, pravivikta bhuk. We experience things privately. In this waking state, we're in the same room, we're seeing the same tables and chairs from a different angle, with a different understanding maybe. We may think it's very beautiful, someone may think it's very ugly, but it's a shared experience. This is pravikta. This is private. Nobody knows what I'm dreaming. I don't know what you're dreaming. You don't know what I'm dreaming. So it corresponds a little bit to simply when we're not experiencing external things, when we're awake but thinking. In general, I don't know what you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking. There may be ways to access it, but in general. But this is the one difference between the ordinary explanation of the 5 koshas and what we find in Mandukya Upanishad, because they'll explain this manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha from the point of view of the waking state, that we're thinking things and we're analyzing things and everything. In this Upanishad, it's a little more cut off. The states are more distinct. So this will be in the dream. So we're experiencing things in the dream as if they're external to us. If we analyze a dream, there's no perception in the dream. There's no external object, and that light is bouncing off of it. It's going, reaching the eyeball and going to the optic. There's no optic nerve in the dream. None of these things are there. We think it's happening that way. When we wake up, we say, oh, I saw these things. I dreamt it. I dreamt that I saw them. There really isn't perception taking place. We don't hear things. We dream that we hear things. And all of this is private. And this is the Dvitiya Padaha, the second state of consciousness. This gets its own name, Tejasa. All of these names are significant. This comes from Tejas, light. So just the light of consciousness. So all of these things are seen with that, the internal light. Then we get to number 5. Yatra suptaha na kanchana kamam kamayate. So this is what we're going to call this suptaha sushupti. This is the dream, the sleep state. Na kanchana kamam kamayate. One doesn't desire any desires. Na kanchana swapnam pashyati. One doesn't see any dreams. Tat sushuptam. So this is the state where we're sleeping but not dreaming. And we don't really know anything about this state. And some of the other Upanishads, they say that when we wake up, we have some feeling that awareness that we were asleep, and we can say, aham sukham aswaptam, that I slept very peacefully. Na kinchita vedisham, I didn't know anything. But there's an awareness of not knowing anything. There's an awareness of the passage of time. But in that state, this ego sense is really sleeping. So there's nothing really that one knows. One doesn't have any desires. One doesn't see any dream. This is sushupta. So sushupta sthanaha, eki bhutaha. Everything has become one. There's no diversity. In the dream, we're seeing a variety of different things. Here, everything has become unified. Eki bhutaha. Pragyana ghana, as if just a mass of awareness without anything to be aware of. Eva anandamaya. So this corresponds to the anandamaya kosha. This anandamaya kosha, and this also corresponds to the karana sharira. We have these overlapping theories, the 3 different bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. The karana sharira will be the anandamaya kosha. And this anandamaya kosha, because we feel some happiness in this, that we're lying close to Brahman when we're sleeping without any dream. But we're not aware of it. This is the problem. And now it's called the causal state because everything that's present in the mind, and our whole memory bank and everything, when we go to sleep, disappears, but it doesn't really disappear. If it really disappeared, when we woke up, we would have memory loss. It goes into a causal state, bija, so that when we wake up, everything comes back again. So that's why this anandamaya kosha and this causal, the karana sharira, are really the same. And this is anandabhuk, so anandamaya kosha. We experience just some type of, it's not the ananda of God realization, but it's just, we're free from all of our worries and anxieties and desires and things like that. We're just kind of back in the womb, just some primal type of experience that's not really an experience, but it refreshes us. So there's some type of anandabhuk experience. We become the experience of joy. Cheto mukhaha. So everything is just this awareness without anything in particular. So we're facing this. We're on the threshold of the highest type of experience. So Cheta Mukhaha. This is called Prajna, and this is Tritiya Padaha. This is the 3rd state of consciousness. It's called Prajna. Now, the 2nd state that we had earlier, what was it called? Tejasa. And this corresponds also to Hiranyagarbha, who is like the cosmic dreamer. Now, this will correspond both to Ishvara, because Ishvara will be the source of everything. And sometimes they'll say also to Avyakta, because that causal state, Avyakta is in the pralaya state, everything is in seed form. So when the new creation comes, everything goes out, it evolves the same way with evolution and involution, that idea. Now, I'm gonna just stop for 1 second here, and I want to try to explain this in terms of an explanation that's given by Swami Parmesanandaji. Swami Parmesanandaji, the Holy Mother's disciple, and he gives what I think is one of the most helpful ways of understanding these three states of consciousness, plus the fourth, which we haven't gotten to yet. He says, imagine that you're sitting inside of a room, and the lights are on, so you can see everything inside of the room. But it's daytime, and the shades are lifted, and there are windows, you can see everything outside. So we're able to see this everything external to us, Bahish Prajna, everything external. But at the same time, we have our thoughts and our feelings, so we can see things which are internal also. Then he says, imagine that it's nighttime, the shades are pulled, and the lights are kept on inside the room. So we don't see anything outside. There's no longer that perception, that's not working. But all of the things inside the mind have created a play for us to watch. So this is the dream state. So the lights are on and all of the objects are there. Then he says that imagine that everything is the same, that it's dark outside, but the lights are turned off. So that our eyes are open, we're looking, but we don't see anything. This is the tamas, which is that one of the elements of Anandamaya Kosha or Vidya is ignorance. So that when we turn the lights on, all the tables and chairs and beds are there exactly the way they were before. The Karanashari. Everything remains the way that it was. So this will be the dreamless sleep state. Then he says, imagine that somebody cleans out everything in the room, so there's nothing there whatsoever, and turns the lights on. So we can see everything that's in the room, but there's nothing there. Now, look at the similarity between dreamless sleep and this Nirvikalpa Samadhi state. In both of them, we're not seeing, because in the mind there's no vrittis, there's nothing to see. But in one, it's because it's covered with darkness, but all of the same samskaras and thoughts and desires and things are still there. But because it's dark, we don't see it. In the other, everything's been rearranged and cleaned out, all the knots are untied, everything, so that when we do see everything external, that the transformation has taken place. Some purification, some great transformation has taken place. So these are, that will be the four states of consciousness. Okay. Everybody with me so far? It's a lot. We took how many months, huh? Once a week to go through all of this. We're trying to squeeze it into one night. So, but it'll be good, of course, for you to go back and study this on your own. This will be a little helpful introduction. Okay. Yeah.
Now so these three states are state of duality, right? Or where duality still exists?
Except in the dreamless sleep state, there's no duality, only because of the absence of awareness. So that says eki bhutaha. Eki bhutaha means everything has become unified, but almost like we're just in a fog and can't see any individual things, huh? Or because it's so dark that we're unable to distinguish one thing from another. Otherwise, the other two are we're seeing variety. So from that point of view, yeah, it would be dualistic.
Now, if we go back to the first verse, when they're saying Om is all this, what is that this is referring to? Is it that
Virat, no, this visible universe. This visible universe, yeah. Omitietam sarvamidam. This is very common in the Upanishads, this idam sarvam or sarvam idam, even in Gita, it almost always refers to this visible universe. This is also a manifestation of Brahman. This is what it's saying, the manifestation of Brahman. We can also say that all this, all the four states of consciousness also, this is all the play of Brahman, the manifestation. Okay, number 6. Esha Sarveshwara, Esha Sarvagnya, Esha Antaryami, Esha Yonihi, sarvasya prabhavapyayo hi bhutanam. Okay, now this is called this dreamless sleep state is called prajna, and this is it says Sarveshwara, the Lord of all, and Sarvagnya. So that means that this corresponds to Ishvara as the source from which everything will come. So on the individual level, that when we wake up from dream sleep, whole universe comes into existence for us, with all of our samskaras, all of our memory, and all of that. When Brahman finishes his night of sleep, and the whole universe comes into being, that's the job of Ishvara. Everything is projected. Brahman and Ishvara are the same, of course, but everything. So that'll be Ishvara. So this on the cosmic level, we'll see this identification, this prajna with Ishvara, and this is also the antaryamin. So Ishvara is not only the source of this universe, but Ishvara dwells within the heart. There's a common theme in Gita, of course, that dwells within the heart and is the witness and also the inspirer for us. If we think of the parable of the two birds, when the lower bird looks at the upper bird isn't simply the witness. The upper bird is the ideal. The upper bird is the one that draws it. There's some power of attraction there. So this is the antaryamin. It's the yoni. Why? Because everything comes out of the womb. Everything comes out of this whole creation comes out of the womb of Brahman or Shakti. Shakti will be this idea of the mother, divine mother. Everything comes out of mother herself, and the origin and dissolution. Prabhava, apyayo. These two things of everything for all beings. So this prajna, or it should be prajna, this because that's the term that's used. We remember our three terms? Vishwa or Vaishwanara for waking state, and then Taijasa for the dream state, and dreamless sleep state is prajna. Here it's called prajna, but it means the same thing. So prajna, because it's just awareness. So this prajna is the Lord of all. He knows everything. He is the indwelling controller of all. All things arise from him and also merge into him. He is the cause of all. So this verse is showing the samashti, the macrocosmic side of this equation. The microcosmic side, of course, is just the dreamless sleep. Okay, now Gaudapada, he starts here because he wants to show that the analysis of the three states of consciousness is essentially distinct from the analysis of the fourth state. So he feels that we've done the three. Somebody might ask, why didn't he wait till the Upanishad finishes all four? Because the fourth one is so different. So he comes in now, and these verses are mostly, we won't go through them, but they're all very nice verses. These mostly just put in verse form the ideas that we find in these first verses of the Mandukya Upanishad itself. Then we have a good number of verses. We get back to the Upanishad, okay, with verse number 7. Now, this will be Turiya. Turiya is the term used here because we're sticking with this idea of four, that we had the first three, this is the fourth. It could easily be called Samadhi. And this is really the superconscious state. Na anta prajnaha. So in this state, there's also no awareness of internal things. Remember, anta prajnaha was the defining feature of dream state. Na bahish prajnaha, that was the defining feature of the waking state. So there's no awareness of anything external. There's no awareness of anything internal. Na ubhayata prajna. So we don't get awareness of both together. This idea of prajnana ghanam, just a mass of awareness somehow, that was the feature of the dreamless sleep state. We can't even explain it that way. So that's also na pragyana ghana, na pragyam, na apragyam. So it is neither awareness nor non-awareness. It's also not a blank, empty state. What we're saying here is what Thakur says, that we can't explain that. We can't explain in words what the experience of this turiya or Nirvikalpa Samadhi is like. One reason is that he who could experience it and explain it is gone. The salt doll has emerged in the ocean at that point. So there's no way to really explain it. But the challenge is to understand how it is very significantly different from the dreamless sleep state, because they look similar. They look similar. So it's distinguishing it. It's not just this massive awareness. Adrishtam, avyavaharyam, agrahyam, alakshanam, achintyam, avyapadeshyam, ekatma pratyaya saram, prapancha upashamam, shantam, shivam, advaitam, chatvartam, panyante sa atma savigyeha. Okay, so adrishtam. This is something beyond the ability. It can't be seen. Avyavaharyam. It can't be experienced. There's no give and take. There's no practical behavioral element to it. Agrahyam. It can't be grasped. We can't understand it intellectually. Alakshanam. There are no defining features of it. Achintyam. It's beyond our ability to rationally think about it. Of the up-to-date, it can't be pointed to. And the one positive thing it says is ekatma pratyaya saram. Essentially, is just a flow of the experience of the self. That's all that it is. We have to get one slightly positive thing here. And then prapancha upashamam, that the whole visible universe recedes, disappears for us. Shantam is a perfectly peaceful state. Shivam is a perfectly everything auspicious. There's something sweet and wonderful and good in this condition. Advaitam, there's no duality there. This is considered to be chatvartam manyante. Sa atma savigyeha. Now, this fourth state is identified with the atma. That's why I say it's not exactly a state. When we say the experience of Brahman, the knowledge of Brahman and being Brahman, is there a distinction? There's really no knowledge of Brahman. It's only being of Brahman. We are that. So this state is not only a study, it's not simply that state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's a Brahman itself, Atman itself. It's a being. It's being transformed. It's merged. Tanmaya is the one with them. Yeah.
Is Satchitananda a prerequisite in Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
Satchitananda will be our way of trying to understand the nature of Brahman. That it'll be a type of description of it, that it's existence, knowledge, and bliss. So it's not exactly a prerequisite, but when we, this is trying to put into words that which we can't really explain. He's asking about the Satchitananda. So this verse says, Turiya, so this fourth, is not conscious of what is happening within. So this distinguishes this anta, prajna. So that means it's not tejas. It's also not conscious of what is going on without. So it's not a vishwa. It is not conscious of anything in between. It is also not a mass of consciousness. So that's to distinguish it from sushupti, from the the sleep state. It is not conscious of all objects simultaneously. It is not unconscious either. So it's not simply a blank. It is invisible. It's so adrishya can't be seen, not susceptible to any kind of usage of vyavaharyam. It is not within the reach of any organ of action. It is beyond perception by any organ, beyond thought, and not to be indicated by any sound in addition. In it, there is only consciousness of the self. And really, there's no separation between knower and object of knowledge here. This is the problem in trying to explain it. If we say consciousness of the self, that means that I'm something other than the self. The self can never be made turned into an object. It's always the eternal subject. When we have external awareness, then it becomes the witness. Then there's awareness. Otherwise, it just is. It is as awareness itself. When we come down from that state, we may feel that I had the vision of the self or the vision of Brahman. But in that state, there's no seer and seeing. There's no distinction there. It's just this oneness. But this is language we have to do. There is only consciousness of the self, and there's a total cessation of the world as such. What is it? It's consciousness of the self. Oh, this is that ekadma pratyaya saram. This pratyaya, this is a kind of a flow of thought, but it's not discursive thought. Just they talk about this avichinna taila dharavat, this unbroken flow of oil going from one vessel to another vessel. So something like that. That just a steady flow. You know, in Swamiji's Song of Samadhi, he talks about nothing exists then but this flow of I, ami, ami, ami. And even that disappears at some point. Even that disappears. It goes from Savikalpa to Nirvikalpa. It is the embodiment of peace and of all that is good, Shiva. It is one without a second. This fourth state is Turiya. Wise people consider this to be the self. So that's why it's not exactly, it is a state when we think somebody entered into that state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But in that state, there's no condition to it. It's unconditional. It's beyond. So it is the self. Then this is Vigyayaha. This has to be realized. It can't be just understood from a philosophical point of view, an intellectual point of view. It has to be experienced to be known. There's no other way. We get just a glimpse of all of this when we try to analyze it this way. Okay, now Gaudapada, he jumps in again. So he waited till the first three states were finished. Then he had his verses. Now he has this one verse. This is so important, where the Upanishad talks about this Turiya state, and then he comes in again. And then we get several verses. And then we get to the Upanishad, and this will be verse number 8. Soyam Atma. Okay, so this, we're talking now really about the self. This is an analysis of the self, both from the phenomenal point of view as a jiva and from the absolute point of view, Atma. Adhyaksharam Omkara Adhimatram Pada Matra Matrascha Pada Akara Ukara Makara Iti. Now, we're not getting anything so very different, but now we have a type of meditation that's brought in. If we meditate on Om, this first vowel sound O is a complex vowel. In Sanskrit, we have simple vowels and complex vowels. We have simple vowels, we have short and long, and we have complex. Complex vowels are a combination of two. So if we have, take the word something like Mahopanishad, it's Maha plus U, A plus U becomes O. You combine the two. So when we see O, it's really a combination of A plus U. So A is Akara. The sound A in Om will stand for the waking state. U will stand for the dream state. And Ma, or just the final that will stand for dreamless sleep state. So we're going to wonder, so what do we do with the fourth state? Because these are the three. So this says, the verse, that here is that self, Soyam Atma, as the letters A, U, Ma of Omkara. Now it's going to say that it's also the padas and the matras and the matras and the padas. That means the matra of A stands for the pada, waking. The matra of U stands for the pada, dreaming. The matra of Ma stands for the pada, the condition of dreamless sleep. And so these different, both the pada, the state of awareness, and the letter or the sound, all of these together are what's meant by Om. So the verse says, here is that self, thought of as the letters, Uma, of Omkara. It is also the matras, the letters, in the padas, the quarters. The padas, the quarters are the matras. So we're trying to identify them. When we think of we think of the waking state. This is that type of meditation. When we think of the whole thing, Om, then I'm the witness of everything and beyond everything. But we'll get to that. U, and Ma are matras, like the padas of the self. So this is the way in which Om is used philosophically, and it becomes a type of meditation. And when we hear Om, now the mind will have a different way of understanding what it means. It means that which is manifesting as all the states of consciousness and which is beyond all of them. Because this Turiya, the real self, is also present in all of these states. It's not just that it's there in the Turiya, in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but that pure consciousness in Turiya is functioning as the witnessing consciousness in the other three states. Jagarita. So now we'll get to the next verse, number 9. Jagarita stanaha. So a little repetition, the waking state. Vaishwanaraha. This is the term that we use for the waking state. This is akara. This is the pratama. This is the first matra. And apter adimatvat va apnoti hava. Now, the Upanishad is going to get very clever here. It's going to explain why we're using this from another point of view, that there'll be different Sanskrit words that also begin with So it stands for apti, for a type of attainment and different things. Then it says havai sarvan kaman adishcha bhavati ya evam veda. So he knows. So this verse, let me read the translation. It says, the waking state in which the self is called Vaishwanara or Vishwa. We have both terms used. Is represented by the Vaishwanara and are both all pervasive apti. So this is just a play using the same first letter. That's all. The seeker who knows this is sure to get all he desires. He is also the best among all. Don't take this literally. This is just by way of praise. Now, it's not just the person who knows that the way we all know the waking state, but who knows that that self is manifesting in the waking state and can easily do it in the dream state and can also do it in dreamless sleep and transcend all of them. Then we get the next verse. Swapna sthanaha tejasa. So we know this, the dream state is called tejaha. Ukara. This is the U. And the uma. Dvikara, dvitiya matra. So this is the second matra. And utkarshat, ubhayatvat, va, utkarshadivat. Now we're giving some explanation of why we're using this U. Havai jnana santatim samanascha bhavati na asya abrahmavid kule bhavati ya evavid. So now they're just praising. The one who knows this, no one who's not a knower Brahman will ever be born in their family. We don't take these things too seriously. This is just trying to show the value of this. So this number 10 says, Tejasa. We know that that's the term given to the dream state. The self in the dream state corresponds to the U in Om. For both occupy the middle position, so they're going to come up with very, very clever ways of explaining it. Uma, this is the in-between one, and the dream is in between waking and dreamless sleep state, and share the same degree of importance. He who knows the sameness of the two excels in understanding and becoming a holy person. No one in his family is without the knowledge of Brahman. Okay, now we'll get to the dreamless sleep state, Sushupti. Sushupta sthanaha prajnaha. So again, this is the term that's used. Prajna is the term that's used for this awareness that's clouded by darkness. Awareness clouded by darkness somehow. Makara tritiya. This is the M. This is the ma, and this is the third matra, and miter. So now we're going to get explanations beginning with the letter M, just to tie it in with this third matra here. Miter api, apiterva, minoti hava, idam sarvam, apitischa bhavati, ya evam veda. So when the self is prajna, not that the self changes, but when the mind enters into that state and we become identified with it, that is when it is in dreamless sleep. It is represented by the third letter M and Om. Prajna and M both stand where Vishwa and Tejasa, along with A and U, end. So this is the final one. In that dreamless sleep state, where we're not aware of either of the others, when we get to the M and Om, we've also finished the other two. So this is another common feature. So prajna, represented by M, these represent the gateway to dissolution into oneness. We're not there. We're in a type of oneness, but without that full awareness. He who knows this knows the world and becomes its resting place. Okay, now Gaudapada comes in again. So we're going to skip that. And we get to the very final verse. So he's giving a series of verses before we get to the last. This is the final verse of the Upanishad. Amatra. So now we get this idea that this fourth state is amatra, that there's no sound. It's neither a, u, or ma. None of them are there because it's transcendent. It's beyond everything. We can say that the whole word Om will stand for that, but without any separation. There's no individuation here. Amatra chaturtaha avyavahara harya. So there's no duality there. So there can't be any experience. There can't be any back and forth, even between knower and know and an object of knowledge. Prapancha upashamaha. We've had this before. This whole external universe recedes from our experience. Shivaha Advaita, these are all things we had before. Evam Omkara, Atma Eva, this is the self alone. Samvishati, we enter into that. Samvishati, Atmana Atmanam. We enter into the self by the self through the self. And what does all of this mean? It means that the mind, Thakur used to say, when the mind is perfectly pure, that pure mind is indistinguishable from the pure self. So it's really the jiva who is merging and entering into all of this. It's that jiva who has no real separate existence. It's like saying that well, we've removed the stick on the surface of water. Has one side of the water merged in the other side of the water? It was always one, but now we have that experience. So this verse says, the fourth quarter of Om is the cosmic self. The self is limitless. So it's both Atma and Brahman, both Atman and Brahman. The self is limitless, beyond thought and speech, non-dual and all good. The phenomenal world disappears into it, or it just disappears. We know that when Thakur had that experience, when Swamiji had that experience, even before the mind went into that Samadhi state, that they both had that experience, this universe as if it's spinning around and just disappearing before my very eyes. And Swamiji said, yeah, what is happening here? And where's my body? I don't feel it anymore. Just before that final merging. So this is something that seems to happen. The phenomenal world disappears into it. Wise people declare the individual self to be the cosmic self. So there's not really one merges into the other. They're one and the same. They're one and the same. Contextually, from the relative point of view, we may make a distinction. Atman will refer to the individual self and Brahman to this cosmic self, but that's because of the upadhi, this identification of these external superimpositions. he who knows this merges himself into the cosmic self. And then this in brackets it says he never again feels he is an individual self. Okay, so this is the end of the Upanishad, and it's a very nice way. It's we could have all of this without bringing Om into it. And very often we'll hear about just this analysis of the three states of consciousness, and this feeling that I'm separate from them, I'm the witness of them. That my sense of I is something that transcends even connection with this physical body because it's there in that dream state. And we get the feeling that I'm the witness. If I'm the witness of all of these, then I can be the witness in the waking state. And again, let me refer to the parable from the Mandukya Upanishad, and it occurs in other Upanishads also, of the two birds. It's actually a Rig Vedic verse. It's not from the Upanishads. It's quoted in the Upanishads, and the interpretation that Swamiji gives. He turns it into a whole parable that there's a tree and there's a bird on one of the lower limbs, and this bird is hopping from limb to limb and eating the fruit on the tree, and some of the fruit is very sweet and the bird is very happy, and then some of the fruit is bitter, and when this bird tastes bitter fruit, then it looks up and it sees that there's a bird at the top of the tree, very joyful and peaceful and majestic, that is not interested in jumping about and is not eating any of the fruit. And the lower bird feels some attraction, then hops up a little higher and then forgets and starts eating the fruit. When it eats the sweet fruit, it's fine. When it gets the bitter fruit, then again it becomes reflective. It looks up at the higher bird and jumps a little higher. Now, in the Upanishad, the higher bird is called Isha, is called the Lord. But as we saw, the Lord dwelling within the body. So this will be the Lord dwelling in the body as the Antaryaman, or as the witness, or the real self. Now, Swamiji says that as the bird goes higher and higher, it starts to feel, it gets pulled in like a magnet, and it starts to feel its individuality melt away until it reaches the upper bird. It doesn't really merge in the upper bird. It realizes it was the upper bird the whole time, seeing a reflection of itself and falsely identifying with it. So we can have this type of analysis without bringing Om, Uma, or any of that. This is a device and a very nice way of doing it, and a very nice way now when we hear Om, we want to meditate on Om, that we can bring in this idea of the three states of awareness and the transcendental state of Turiya, and the fact that I am one with that self, and the self is present, manifesting in the different states of consciousness, but also beyond all of them, beyond the unchanging witness of all of the states. If it weren't the same witness, then we wouldn't remember the dream. If it were something else, then we wouldn't, it has to be the same I, the same awareness that's there throughout all of the states of consciousness. And when there's nothing for it to be aware of, it just becomes consciousness itself. It exists as the self. Okay, so now I turn it over to you for questions or discussion. Anything that wasn't clear, you can raise at this point also.
Maharaj,
Yes.
can you clarify the term Hiranyagarbha?
Hiranyagarbha is very hazy in my mind. They talk about sometimes identified with the Brahma, with the creator. Sometimes there's a little almost mythology to it, that Hiranyagarbha was first created and then Brahma and then the creation of individuals and everything. But in this context, this will be the cosmic form of that aspect of Brahman. See, Brahman has different, it's a step down theory. We have the absolute Brahman, which is what doesn't do anything. It's beyond everything. The pure consciousness. If we want to bring in a little bit of this Shakti idea or Maya idea, then it has this power to dream this universe. Then that'll be Hiranyagarbha. But it has to have some storehouse. We can't have a dream unless we have our memory bank, and there has to be some divine source. That'll be Ishvara. This is the way it's explained here. So somehow Hiranyagarbha is the golden womb or golden egg from which this universe comes forth. It has something to do with one of the theories of Upanishadic theories of creation. And in the Upanishads, the idea of creation is a little bit of a realistic theory. It's not so much a snake and a rope. There's really this idea that there's some actual projection out of Brahman. And we get the image, of course, of the spider. And there's an actual thread that comes out of the spider. And that thread is what can create this universe, which is like a web. And then Brahman can enter into it. So we have that type of, the Upanishads really are more naturalistic and realistic than the later schools of Advaita Vedanta, which talk more about Maya and illusion or appearance. For the seers of the Upanishads, they accepted this universe as real, but traced it back to Brahman. Traced it back. This idea of this projection that we find in a couple of different Upanishads, Taittiriya Upanishad and I think Brihadana Upanishad. That Brahman looked around and felt lonely and thought, may I be many. Now, from that, it's not really just dreaming this universe. What's projected out of it is the elements. And each element gets personified. So Akasha thinks also, or Agni thinks also, there's no one here, may I become many, and then becomes one of the other elements. Then the elements combine and we have this whole universe. These are not to be taken as scientific ideas. These are very poetic ways of trying to explain this creation, which we really can't explain. So the short answer is that Hiranyagarbha will be Brahman. So we have this Brahman, I was saying, so Brahman can be manifested as this Hiranyagarbha. Then there's also the manifestation of Brahman as becoming everything. So that'll be Virat. That'll be another way of looking at it. We have Swarat. Swarat will be just in his own glory, not connected or attached to anything. And then the lowest one will be Virat, that everything we see is nothing but Brahman. And then the kind of in-between aspects to it. It's, I like to give the analogy of an individual who sleeps, that the individual who is asleep, who is sleeping, is Brahman. Then the individual who is dreaming will be the creator, either Ishvara or Hiranyagarbha, something like that, will be the creator. And the dream itself will be Virat, because there's nothing but Brahman in some apparently visible form. And the Jivatman will be that same Brahman, that same sleeper who has become a dreamer, who now is running around and doing all sorts of funny things in the dream, one and the same. So there's kind of a step-down theory, that the main thing is that because the whole time Brahman is sleeping, that never changes, whether the dream is there or is not there. So that's the essential element. That's the Nirguna Brahman element. When the dream comes, the sleeping doesn't stop. That has to be there the whole time. That sustains everything. But unless there's a dream, there's no dreamer. So it's not that there's a second thing called Ishvara. It's that Brahman is called Ishvara when there's a dream. There's no creator without the creation. Does that mean that the Ishvara doesn't exist at that time? No, it simply means that it's not functioning at that time. That's why Thakur says it is like the snake. Either sometimes it's wriggling, that'll be during creation. Sometimes it's coiled up, but that power is always there, present. And whether it's wriggling or coiled up, the snake is there. The snake is the snake. So Brahman is always present.
Maharaj, so in that parable of the two birds, the second bird never really existed, right? Or it's only an apparent existence?
It has an apparent existence. It has an apparent existence, yes.
Now, tracing that back to the 3 states and the 4th state, now is the 4th state establishing the fact that the other three states are only apparent existence?
There's nothing absolutely real about the other states because they can be transcended. There's nothing in this Upanishad that says that they're illusion or anything like that. But they all involve some false identification of the real self with these different coverings. So in the waking state, we're falsely identified with the physical body, right? Annamaya kosha, plus all of the others. Dream state, we're identified with this manomaya kosha and vijnanamaya kosha, and the sleep state with anandamaya kosha. So there's some false identification that takes place, but it's the real self that's existing and present in all of the states. But this Turiya state, when we realize that, then we realize that self, that bird at the top of the tree, is present whether we know it or not. Whether we completely forget it and think we're the lower bird, that we're so engrossed in external things, we're not aware that everything is being watched by the higher self, that it's still present. It's always there. That's the real self. So what we want to do, because it's not possible for us to very easily go into the state of Samadhi, we want to try to remain aware of ourselves as the witness. And what is the advantage to being aware of ourselves as the witness? We don't get entangled in the world. This is why Swamiji says, be the witness. Somebody yells at us and insults us and everything. I watch, I'm the witness. Why should it affect me? Huh? I'm not that person that you're criticizing. I'm the real self. I know that. The mind may get a little disturbed. I'll watch the mind. What is that disturbance? It's nothing but a vritti in the mind. I'm not that. Huh? So there's a very practical side to this philosophy that I am the witness. And this term witness, sakshi, this is used for the individual, and it also means this indwelling presence of the divine. That's why if somebody says, oh, that upper bird is really Ishvara, and somebody says, no, it's the witness, they're one and the same. In Gita, there's one of the definitions when Krishna, he says, I am the witness. I'm Sakshi. That's one of the ways he describes himself. I am that witness. Kshetrajna, I am the knower of the field. As the witness. So nothing but Brahman or Ishvara, however we understand it, who is dwelling within as the real witness. Now, Thakur says, he emphasizes that this feeling of I and this identification with this lower self, it may not be mirroring reality. There may be some element to avidya, to false identification, but it doesn't leave that it's something that inherent in the human condition. So we should try to utilize it and then establish a relationship. Let this lower bird see in the Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, is very beautiful. There's a second verse after that, which says that Jushtam yadapashyati anyamisham, when the lower bird sees this adorable Lord, the upper one, then it becomes Vita Shoka, becomes free from all grief, and sees its glory. So as long as we feel some separation, the stick of ego is there, we can feel the glory of the divinity dwelling within the heart, God dwelling within the heart, as the real witness. There's who is answering our prayer, listening to our prayers, God dwelling within the heart. So he accepts the reality that I'm really the self, but he accepts the practicality that I have this I consciousness. So let me establish a relationship with God. Let me feel that divine presence within the heart. Let me feel myself also to be the witness, so that I don't get too entangled in things. I don't get lost in the passions and desires and all of that, and feel that divinity within, and be content with the relationship until it becomes so intimate that the sense of I merges, so that the lover and the beloved become one. The child and the mother, child lies on the lap of the mother and becomes one with the mother. Before that, we go through this relationship. This is the practical side of all this. If anybody has to say something, make sure to unmute. So, Ushaben.
Swamiji, can
Okay.
I ask you one
Yeah.
question? What is the difference between Sarvakalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
Okay. The best way to understand this, I think, is by reading Swamiji's poem.
Okay.
That hymn to Samadhi of the Vikalpa means that there's something going on in the mind. That means that there's some experience, some object of awareness. Nirvikalpa means that there are no vrittis whatsoever. Now, there are two ways of understanding Savikalpa Samadhi. One, as I say from Swamiji's Song of Samadhi or Hymn of Samadhi, that's two different names, that he says that everything merges and there's simply this flow of I, that I'm aware, I'm aware that I'm floating in this on this ocean of Satchidananda, that a very joyful experience. Maybe Savikalpa Samadhi is better than Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I don't know. I haven't had either, so it's hard to say. But he says even this I, even that merges. And then along Manasavocharam, then what is beyond mind and speech, whatever exists, then it exists. We can't say anything about it. But coming down from that state, we're immersed in the highest type of bliss. So the distinction here will be, one is that the mind is perfectly still and quiet, but there's some awareness. I somehow feel that I've entered into this state. I don't have that individuality, no sense of I connected with this physical body or anything, but some self-awareness. Even that vanishes in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now the other thing, we're talking about Bhava Samadhi. This will also be a type of Savikalpa Samadhi. And this Bhava Samadhi, this will be for those on the path of devotion, that the mind will enter into higher states in different realms, and they can have the visions of gods and goddesses. And here Thakur would talk to the Divine Mother. All sorts of things would take place. This is also Samadhi with Vikalpa. But it's not what we'll read in the Yoga Sutras, a little bit different. But this is also, he doesn't call it Savikalpa Samadhi. He'll use the term Bhava Samadhi, but it's the devotional equivalent to the Savikalpa Samadhi of Raja Yoga.
But Swamiji, in the second state of consciousness, where, like the dream state, there is in history many people who have dreamt, who got messages from God, and thereby they worked on those orders or on those instructions. So, but that is a dream state. When a person in his dreams, like Rani Rashmani also saw to build Dakshineshwar in her dream. So that consciousness, we would always say it is subconscious mind, that dreaming. But
yes. It is the subconscious mind, but in that state, this all of us, if we're all in that same state together, then somehow this what we're calling subconscious mind will be part of this cosmic mind. This is one way of understanding it. And in that and in that cosmic mind, there can be access. Huh? We can, because people, Thakur even talks about swapna siddha, people who have become attain perfection, even in the dream state. And he talks about the difference between ordinary dream and a spiritual dream. And as you say, many people received mantra in a dream, especially from Holy Mother. And sometimes she would say, "Tell me what you received, my child." And they would recite it. She would say, "Yes, it was real." Other times she would say, "No, that's not exactly right. Perhaps they didn't remember it, or who knows." So main difference between a spiritual dream and an ordinary dream. And I don't mean, the metaphysical difference. I'm talking about the practical difference, is that we wake up after a certain type of spiritual dream and we think, wow, there's something much more real, something very almost transforming. There may be days will go by, maybe a whole lifetime will remember that dream. That yes, Thakur came to me, I saw him. I really, because the dream is real.
It's real.
As we experience it, it's real. This is why Thakur says to the Jnani, dream state is as real as the waking state. Huh? When we're in the dream, it's 100% real. And if we can remember it clearly, and sometimes we wake up from those dreams and we remember it very clearly. And we really feel that I couldn't see Thakur in this lifetime, but I had that experience where I really felt that we were face to face, or he spoke to me, or I saw Holy Mother, direct disciples, something like that. So if we want to be metaphysical about it, we can try to explain it that in that state we are lying on the lap of the divine. We are merged in this cosmic mind somehow. And that perhaps through grace that something can penetrate that and pierce that. Otherwise, it's a remix of whatever's in the subconscious mind.
And Swamiji, one more thing. Did Thakur went to Samadhi so many times, and Vivekananda also, Swamiji also. But did Thakur elaborately express his experience, what he experienced in his Samadhi?
He expressed everything except Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
I see.
And very often he would come down from the Bhava Samadhi and he would tell them, do you know what I saw? And I saw a procession of Chaitanya Deva, and I saw that you were there and you were there. He could give very specific things about it. But every time he tried to explain Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he would go into it. And then afterwards he said, I tried my best, it can't be done. Okay, Baladayana, it can't be done. Because there's no I there to record it, what that experience is like. The salt dal has melted into the ocean. Then who can come back and explain what it was like? So even he couldn't explain this Nirvikalpa Samadhi experience, except that we know that coming down from that is just filled with joy and bliss. Huh? So it's not just a negative state, but it's something beyond description. Experiencer and experience.
Thank you, Swamiji. Pranam.
Thank you. Pranam.
Thank you, Swamiji. We can have a closing prayer if you want to.
Okay.
Ram Swamiji.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinas, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kashchitu kabhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May you all be happy. May you all be free from disease. Don't anybody get this COVID-19. May you all experience only good things in their life. May no one suffer from misery. Peace be unto all.